Welcome to Decentralized News. I am your host, Peter DeVries, joined as always by Ozzy6869. And if you're interested in Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, DeFi, and the macro news that affects it, welcome in. This is not financial advice. Please do your own research. Now let's get started with some of the biggest headlines. Go right into kind of the overall markets. They've been down a little bit over the weekend, the crypto markets. The US unemployment comes in lower than expected at 3.4%. Seemed to be causing some market volatility. Did you see this, Ozzy?
It pulled back because one of the key factors that Jerome Powell had been looking at prior to the last Federal Reserve meeting was the employment gap closing. So less jobs available per person looking for jobs. And the unemployment rate dropped despite announcements of layoffs from other companies in the US, and that ratio just increasing, the number of jobs available per person looking, because they're trying to prevent the wage inflation spiral. So wasn't great news for the market, but good news for the overall US economy.
Yeah, the market seemed to start pumping after the 0.25% rate increase. And then this piece of news seemed to put some cold water on it. Jerome Powell made comments at the 0.25% raise saying as long as unemployment numbers remain good, the US can still take rising interest rates. And it seems like the market just doesn't want to believe what Jerome Powell is saying, that he's going to have to pivot or stop, just put a pause on rate hikes. But this seems to just throw cold water on it.
Yeah,
Like watch on the ground, they're more supporting his comments that he can keep going.
yeah, they're not ready to trust. A lot of people were worried that he was gonna quote unquote rug pull the markets by going with a half basis point hike. And so we were lucky that he didn't do that, because that's why the market really took off. I think a lot of the comments that he made were super bullish during his speech. They aren't indicative of a potential move of reducing rates anytime soon. There was an indication of openness to reducing rates potentially towards the end of the year if economic data would support it. So that's good news for the crypto markets as a whole.
Yeah, we went from 0.75 to zero point 0.5, then pretty quickly to 0.25. So it's like, are you going to keep doing the 0.25s or pause, go to zero, just leave them for a while? Everyone looking to see that, but there's not like a lot of wiggle room. So
No, he didn't really indicate that he was going to pause just yet. So he did suggest that they were watching what the Bank of Canada is doing, and we talked about in our last show that they were going to pause more increases. So something to watch, that's for sure.
yeah,
Very bullish for the markets overall.
I think as we posted, Jerome Powell will be speaking. He speaks Tuesday.
Yeah, he'll be speaking Tuesday at the Economic Club of Washington. So whenever he speaks, that always has an
Yeah.
impact on the market. And so we're definitely going to be watching that alongside the CPI report next week, Tuesday. So those big data indicators will have an impact on where the market keeps going, whether it keeps going up or whether it keeps going down or goes back down. This,
Couple of big Tuesdays in a row for the market.
yeah. That being said, earnings seasoning is continuing for another week with over 1,000 corporate earnings report this week. We had a whole bunch of big tech ones last week with Apple, Meta, and other companies reporting their earnings. Apple's poor earnings impacted the market and pulled it down a little bit when they were below expectations. So that is something to watch.
Yeah, it seems like
BP,
all roads lead to the Fed, and people are watching what these earning reports look like and how it will influence what the Fed does.
yeah, and BP is one of the big ones to
Yeah.
watch for this week. Although it's not tech, energy and the energy sector have a big impact on inflation, and so it is one to keep an eye on this week.
We can move on from macro kind of into some very interesting Bitcoin news. Ordinals Project. Bitcoin has entered the NFT market. The Ordinals Project makes it possible to take a particular Satoshi, the native currency of Bitcoin, the smallest denomination, and mark it with a unique identifier as explained by the creator. The protocol uses inscriptions or arbitrary content like text or images that can be added to sequentially numbered Satoshis or SAT. And there's a bit of a debate going on this. Did you see this story?
Yeah, I've seen this story. I think it's interesting that it's causing debate. It adds more use to Bitcoin. It somewhat eliminates a need for these altcoins, although the speed of the Bitcoin network adds a barrier to that because Bitcoin's a lot slower than some of the other coin chains and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, there's some arguments for or against. I think this is one of the more interesting debates that's come to Bitcoin. It's pretty undramatic a lot of the time, but because of its decentralized nature, it does have some interesting things come up. But it's one of the more interesting debates since the block size wars. The bears are saying compete with the traditional payment transaction of this idea. That's what the Bitcoin was meant for, and it'll crowd blocks and drive up transaction fees. The other issue is that universally illegal content can be forever transcribed onto a decentralized immutable blockchain, possibly inviting heavy-handed regulation and adding risks to network users. So there is that argument. But on the positive side, it's a natural evolution of Bitcoin because of the previous upgrades, SegWit and Taproot, making it possible for these types of NFTs. And they seem to be pretty basic right now, but not like smart contracts. But seeing how that evolves is very interesting to me. And to counter the argument about the transactions, this idea of a security budget, it prepares a security budget for a post-subsidy revenue for miners. So eventually Bitcoin will not be producing a subsidy for the miners as a block reward. So the fact that there are transaction fees and it's already building up the security budget is potentially a positive thing.
Yeah.
So those are some arguments. I come from the libertarian Bitcoin maxi mindset. So if it's what it can do, we'll see. I try the protocol, but it'd be interesting to watch this debate. I can't say I'm like decided. I more kind of trust the community.
Yeah, the community is very divided on what to do about it. Some people want to censor it because they say it violates the basic nature of Bitcoin and how Bitcoin was supposed to be something that no one could touch or control. It was fully decentralized. There was no one creating projects or anything on the network. And so this is an interesting idea to watch and see what happens from there.
I'm sure we'll have some updates as we go forward. Another fun piece of news, the NFT platform SoRare announced a an NFT partnership with English Premier League. SoRare offers free-to-play competition that allows 3 million users to compete by collecting soccer players in the form of non-fungible tokens. And they're submitted into a fantasy team type of thing, generate rewards. All fans around the world can now collect, buy, and sell and trade officially licensed digital cards. I thought this was pretty fun, exciting NFT.
It's pretty exciting because it's taking trading cards like you and I had as a kid and allowing you to have them safely and forever on the network. Imagine, I don't know how many cards you lost, but I used to collect hockey cards all the time, and so many of my cards got damaged or whatever or lost over time, and so not losing those would be amazing. And then the other really cool thing is fantasy teams. Fantasy sports are a huge market in the US for football.
It's a fun form of gaming. So a lot of critique of gaming and DeFi is that it's not very fun. But fantasy sports have proven to be very fun and attractive to 3 million users in this case.
At least for soccer so far. And once it expands to football, like the NFL, hockey, basketball.
I played a lot of fantasy football earlier in my life. It went to the wayside once I got into this field, but it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun doing it.
There's a lot of betting too. There's a lot of money in fantasy
and fantasy
sports.
Yeah. So, we had a small pool and we would pool it ourselves. It was super fun.
Exactly. So there's a huge pool, and that's a huge funding revenue for DeFi and crypto as a whole as we get into digital gaming, playing cards, and fantasy sports. So super cool partnership there.
We have some updates from previous episodes, a couple of stories. First one, Russia's largest lender, Sberbank, said that its DeFi platform on Ethereum would be ready to launch in May. So this is happening.
Yeah, they started almost a month ago or a month and a half ago, started talking about launching their first licensed DeFi platform in Russia through the bank, and they're now setting a date and a time frame on it, which is quite interesting, a big advancement, and it's pretty fast with the full launch in May, with they're starting open testing
Right.
in March. So that's pretty impressive and a huge turnaround in seeing banks and institutions implement crypto.
And just another little tidbit in this story, it said the platform will be compatible with Ethereum and particularly conducive for Metamask users. So all familiar to us, but just FYI, Ethereum adoption. There's also an update from a story out of El Salvador on the Volcano token that we talked about briefly. So El Salvador to offer Bitcoin bonds with the Volcano token.
We joked about Volcano Token and El Salvador becoming a DeFi project in the show when we covered this, and it's pretty interesting to this moving forward. They're partnering with Bitfinex, and Bitfinex is going to be applying for a special license with their digital securities regulator, and they're going to be licensing Bitfinex to sell the securities, and they'll sell Volcano Token for approximately 1 billion in bonds. That billion will be split half for building a tax-free coastal town dubbed Bitcoin City, which will use excess geothermal energy to mine Bitcoin, and the other half will be to buy Bitcoin for El Salvador's reserves.
Yeah. Yeah, exciting building. And just the mention of the word bonds and the bond market when it comes to Bitcoin in terms of long term just really excites me too. And this is all possible started in December with El Salvador passing the digital assets. So this creates a digital regulator that Bitfinex can apply to. And then once they get the approval, but they still have to do all these things. So they have to actually create this security regulator. Then Bitfinex can apply. But it looks like it's all laid out though.
There's a roadmap, and if there's a roadmap to
And like
how
a
these things can move
clear
forward,
roadmap.
yeah,
Clear road.
there's now a very clear roadmap of how this can move forward, not only in El Salvador, but a kind of a roadmap for other small countries or even bigger countries like the US on how to
Okay.
roll out something like this. And
I got a fun question for you. What's your prediction on the next country that does what El Salvador has done? Gone as far as El Salvador.
either the UK or Fiji.
UK. Wow, that would be huge.
So the reason why I'm throwing the UK out there is because their new prime minister is very bullish on crypto, and they've already talked about passing crypto regulations. They want to become a crypto hub. And so that's been the language that's coming out of the UK. And so, especially with their split from the EU with Brexit a couple of years ago, this would be a real opportunity for them to be a major player to really step forward with that. And then Fiji, they also have a very open prime minister to crypto and has already discussed potentially making Bitcoin legal tender. So I feel like both those countries are good targets. And if I were to take one last guess, I would say somewhere else in South America, Brazil
Oh,
or
that would be my guess.
Argentina.
I'd say Argentina. Yeah, just because of the potential presidential candidate.
That, and they already passed that digital assets law. They haven't recognized Bitcoin fully as legal tender and added it as a reserve currency.
And also the huge need, just the inflation that's been going on there.
Yeah, I feel like that would be that would be, if I were to cop out and go with 3 rather than just one, those would be my picks.
I think maybe a dark horse is Nigeria, but the government seems a little, even though the people,
Yeah.
but who knows? That can change, but that might take time. Yeah. Anyway, we can get into some adoption news. This was an interesting one. This has to do with insurance. Cherokee Acquisition is offering insurance for investors fund on 3 centralized exchanges, 3 big ones: Coinbase, Kraken, and Binance. So insurance for investor funds. Did you see this? I thought this was pretty interesting.
Major to think that, okay, they're willing to take the risk on these 3 big exchanges. We're not talking small exchanges here. And
I'm
insure
surprised.
your funds. Go
It's
ahead.
interesting to see Binance. No, it's just interesting to see Binance in there Coinbase and Kraken, just because those are US, Coinbase and Kraken, they're US centric, where Binance is more worldwide. But yeah, I guess it's put options. I don't really understand that aspect of it, to protect account holders' deposits on listed exchanges, but paying back 100% of assets in the account if the exchange files for bankruptcy and pauses withdrawals. There's a monthly fee. It ranges from about 0.25% to 0.55% of your balance to get this insurance. It's slightly different based on your balance size, and the different exchanges have slightly different rates.
That's pretty interesting. The fact that it's moving, I don't know, like FDIC insurance or CIDC insurance on how your deposits of funds within banks. So you don't necessarily pay for it when you deposit in a bank, but this is a step towards that. And so that's huge for crypto and just ensuring, I don't know, people feel more comfortable bringing their money into DeFi. And especially for institutions, they'd probably be willing to pay that to be able to get access to those greater
If
those
I'm
greater
on a if I'm on a central exchange, it's usually very quick. So I hope that I get to a point where I have enough money in the little amount of time where I would feel like I need this. I feel like I'd be doing pretty good if I have this insurance.
Yeah, I think this is probably more for institutional investors who don't necessarily bring funds off chain as
And
on chain as much, and they're more keeping funds in centralized exchanges, and that's why.
or they're doing maybe traders
Yeah,
who are doing trading.
that's it. So traders or big institutions that are just buying and holding and don't necessarily have potentially the authority or the knowledge or the security measures to be able to bring it on chain and into a cold wallet or whatever. I think that's a pretty good it's a pretty good development for Bitcoin and for crypto as a whole, and especially for these three big exchanges. It makes them the preferred options potentially for these institutional investors.
I guess it begs to jump to this story. According to Hapi Labs, the combined loss of users and investors in 2022 exceeds 63.9 billion. So some protection coming.
Yeah, lots of losses. The market was so down and there was a lot of rugs, and we covered a lot of rugs as part of the story and hacks and
So many, it's hard to cover. Yeah, there's just too many.
yeah. And hopefully we keep seeing that number come down. I feel like it will over time as
Yeah.
people get more educated, as
Or
the
at least the
technology.
percentage of the total value that goes down. Because I can imagine that number going up, but just because also the whole economy, the whole market is growing. But yeah, it just becomes less prevalent in terms of its market share.
Yeah, it's 52% of cases were related to hacks and exploits. So hacks and exploits are starting to become a bigger portion, because in 2021 that it was only 23%. So hopefully DeFi security gets upped to an even higher level, because I think that's where we'll start seeing more and more problems.
Despite all of these problems, there was a survey from DeVeere Group. 82% of millionaires, high net worth individuals, were interested in Bitcoin, and they sought advice on how to start or expand their cryptocurrency hold. This is typically a more conservative group, but they were not deterred by the bear market. And the quote from this was, "Wealthy investors understand that digital currencies are the future of money, and they don't want to be left in the past." So despite all this volatility, there's still interest.
That's very bullish for crypto. We'll talk about Charlie Munger, who said, let's ban crypto. That's what Charlie Munger and his good old friend Warren Buffett are saying. Like, they don't understand crypto, they want out, but maybe those are billionaires, like they're the old boomers. Maybe the younger generation of millionaires,
Right.
Silicon Valley and everything, are seeing, hey, no, we want to get into crypto. Now is the right time, and recognizing the value. And so that's in crypto as a whole.
I think someone like Munger does help keep some of that older money on the sidelines, or smaller percentages going in. But there's clearly some sentiment. Not everyone agrees with him.
Yeah, and let's hope it stays that way. I'm bullish on crypto, and I'm bullish on what we're seeing with adoption. So that's all of the stories I can say are looking really good. Even if we go a little bit further, we can talk about how the NFT market has already started to take a turn. They're,
Yeah.
for the third month in a row, there's been an increase in the NFT market with over 946 million in trading volume across 9.5 million NFTs sold. This is the
Wow.
highest since June of 2022. So huge change in that.
Yeah,
NFTs for a while looked like they were dead. And
right.
OpenSea has now seen a 2/3 increase in trading volume, and they represent about 60% of the market. So that's incredible for NFTs.
Yeah, when the FTX hit and the market was in its local bottom, anyway, I don't want to say it is the bottom, but DeFi really took it on the, I don't know, DeFi was just looking very unattractive. And NFTs certainly feel that. It seems like one of the even more volatile area inside a volatile area. So there's a lot of opportunity there. There's a bunch of small markets and opportunity in NFTs. Do you trade NFTs? Do
A
you?
little bit. I've been especially experimenting with NFTs and Arbitrum. I think that's an interesting place. There's a lot of things going on with the Arbitrum airdrop coming, and
Oh, I think getting into an NFT space when it's new there's really good opportunity. So when I first got into DeFi, I started in Ethereum and it was just so expensive and the risk was so high and I knew so little about it. And I started messing around with CNFTs. And because it was so new and young, I was able to take advantage of that, just getting lucky a little bit. So just being there early can have some advantages.
yeah. So I've been messing around with that and Trader Joe's Arbitrum Adventure, which is kind of a whole series of little quests to earn NFTs and prizes with new platforms on Arbitrum. And so I've been experimenting with that, and I'm really looking forward to what's coming with Arbitrum and NFTs in that space. I'm also dabbling a little bit in Solana, but Solana's a whole other beast.
Yeah. Actually, just hearing you talk about it makes me want to do my own research on Arbitrum a little bit. Thank you.
Happy
um,
to.
yeah, we can move on though. Moody's, which is a TradFi name, is planning to develop a rating system for stablecoins. Did you see that one?
Yeah, Moody's does credit ratings for public traded companies, and they're planning to rate up to 20% stable coins based on the quality of their reserves. And so that is really huge, adding potentially more security, or at least a better understanding of how these different stable coins differ and which ones are safer, potentially remove some of the FUD and worry around stablecoins. I feel like that's one of the biggest concerns, one of those always big black swans that no one's 100% sure what's going to happen with is stablecoins. And so Moody dabbling into the space starts adding some legitimacy to stablecoins and a little bit of better understanding of them.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to take any responsibility for what happens with these stablecoins based on their ratings, but yeah, it is. I'll be interested to see what they have to say about it. But speaking of stablecoins, there was a story out of the Wall Street Journal about Tether. It's pretty interesting. That back in 2018, 87% of Tether was owned by just 4 people.
It's what happens.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah. When I started digging into the story, I was just maybe interested in like the difference between Tether and other stablecoins. How do they make their money and things like that? But the fact that there was 4 owners, it came out through an investigation from the New York Attorney Generals and the Commodities Futures Trading Commission in 2021 about their ownership structure a little bit. But the owners were the co-founder, Giancarlo Davanci, he had 42%. Then Bitfinex CEO, Jean Louis van der Velde, and their chief counsel of Bitfinex, they owned another 15% each. And then a man with dual citizenship and 2 different names, one in the UK and Thailand, he owned another 13%. So just interesting seeing that. But what I found out looking into the story was how Tether actually makes their money. So if you buy a Tether, they take that money and just basically put it into treasury bonds and just earn 4%. I mean, that's an estimate. It's not all off chain. So it's not 100% verifiable, but this what is presumed they're doing with the money. And they have issued 67 billion in Tether. And if they're earning about 4% on it, that's 3.6 billion annually. And there's very little overhead. I just found that so intriguing.
Yeah, it's a cash
So,
cow. It's like DC. It's a huge
yeah.
cash cow. And I mean,
Why would they do fraud if they're just making all this money?
yeah, there's no need to do anything funny because they essentially are being able to make money by people wanting to get on chain. So
Yeah.
there's absolutely nothing wrong with there's no reason for them to go any further.
And
They
the other
won't.
interesting thing investigating the story that I found out was that one of the big difference between Tether and the other stable coins is that it's an offshore. So there's the risk of the US and China coming really hard regularly compared to USDC, which is US based. So I thought that was another interesting aspect, and that none of their information is really on chain. So you have to trust the audits and a little more trust involved just because it's off. So
Yeah,
anyway,
that's the big challenge with stablecoins, and that's why Moody stepping in like this and providing a rating doesn't necessarily solve this problem, but it helps address the problem. Could help. So I definitely won't turn my eye to stablecoins and keep. I think they're going to be a bigger and bigger story in 2023.
oh yeah, the stable coins do feed the chains and they help move fiat around. But speaking of chain news, Ethereum launched a test net to check the withdrawal of ETH from the Beacon chain. So they have the Shanghai hard fork coming up, doing some testing.
Yeah, there's two schools of thought right now on what's going to happen when the Shanghai fork comes out. Whether it causes a huge sell-off from whales like Coinbase or others who've had funds staked on ETH for sometimes 2 years now. So kind of something to keep an eye on, but it could also be a way of seeing a ton more ETH locked up because people like you and I who didn't want to stake until we knew when we would potentially be able to unstake might jump in stake. So could be it could be a big nothing burger, could be a quick down or just a slow bleed for a couple weeks and then
Or there could be a ton more people putting staking
yeah.
because they weren't before. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, there's a debate. What's going to happen? This would be interesting to watch it play out. But when the Shanghai fork happens, all this staked ETH that no one knew when they could get it out will become available. And new people can stake and there won't be a time limit on it. That's the general idea.
Yeah.
So we see how it plays out.
Diving a little bit back into big chain news, Binance and Air Astana, which is the largest airline in Kazakhstan, have announced a huge partnership. They're allowing people to take rewards points and loyalty points and turn them into crypto for a limited time.
Love
So
it.
that's interesting. We've talked
That's
about
real
having,
mold adoption.
yeah, loyalty points as cryptocurrencies. Makes a lot of sense to me. All on chain. You can make sure that a company isn't stealing your rewards points. You
Yeah, there
hold
seems like
them.
a lot of crossover between the blockchain and just loyalty programs in general is coming.
There's a very suitable use case for
Yeah.
both. And so it makes a lot of sense. It's one of those easy conversions.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that plays out this year or the next, like in the midterm, next couple of years, and how that evolves. Because it seems like low hanging fruit for kind of this blockchain technology and DeFi in general.
Yeah, I definitely think it's low hanging, perfect fruit for people to take advantage of. And so we'll see what happens.
And it also has some more news with Mastercard. They're going to launch a prepaid cryptocurrency in Brazil. It's always fun to hear about.
Yeah, Binance is making moves. Brazil is one of those countries that we've speculated could be a big adopter of crypto in the next little while and Bitcoin as a whole. So interesting to see that it's now launching in Brazil.
Yeah. Binance is also re-entering the South Korean market, and they acquired the platform GoPax. They acquired a meaningful equity position at GoPax. The acquisition comes a few months after GoPax halted withdrawals from certain products and the collapse of the FTX exchange. GoPax has some connection to Genesis. But anyway, yeah, Binance plans to enable customer withdrawals and interest payments on GoPax's yield product, GoFi, and puts them back in the South Korean market, which I guess they were out of.
Yeah, Binance continues to make moves. They've also announced the BNB chain is going to be introducing decentralized storage infrastructure to compete with stuff like Filecoin and Storage Coin. So interesting to see the chains also getting some more news, and they're also implementing parallel execution EVM.
No, just a lot of development. They seem to be firing on all cylinders all the time.
Yeah, they never seem to stop. They always seem to be a huge news story with us here.
Yeah, both the exciting and the kind of boring, but they're just front and center all the time.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Cardano, who's started being a bigger story again. Unfortunately, their algorithmic stablecoin DJED stumbled out of the gate with an early depeg issue. Not a good sign for an algorithmic stablecoin. We talked about whether or not it's a little too early for the next algorithmic stablecoin, but we'll see.
For a silver lining on this is that before it got too big, it already is showing some issues. So we'll see. It better than it just getting all huge. And so is the market ready for another algorithmic stablecoin? And it stumbles out of the gate. So it's like, keep a close eye on it. Don't FOMO in or get too excited about what it could mean, because that could cause more damage in the future.
Yeah, maybe it'll help them figure out their issues and
Right.
get everything sorted before it gets too big. Hopefully this stumble is a learning lesson rather than the death of it, but also just a learning point for everybody that's involved. And it was only a brief depeg.
Right.
It dropped
didn't bl-
to 97.5 cents and then rather quickly bounced back.
Yeah.
It's not like a UST type situation, but it is starting to show some vulnerabilities at Cardano. We had DJED dipping. We had the brief outage on the network for a few minutes. So
Right.
it's growing and it's making the news, but they're also having some
Growing pains,
issues. Yeah, some growing
some
pains.
sore knees and sore backs.
Yeah. So important to keep an eye on that.
Speaking of growing pains, XRP waiting for their lawsuit. But in the meantime, they will help Montenegro develop their CBDC. So they're still developing outside the United States. It just highlights that.
Yeah, they're building quite heavily outside the United States still, and good for them integrating now with Montenegro and trying to help Montenegro. So they're positioning themselves for any situation, their
Right.
lawsuit. So I think that's good for XRP enthusiasts to know.
And then for our friends following ImmutableX and Optimism, we have a couple little updates. Immutable announces digital passports. This is not really a little update. This is very cool. Immutable announces digital passports for Web3 gamers. That was a fun one.
Yeah, this is a big story. I think one of the biggest barriers for gaming in Web3 is having to sign transactions, figuring out a MetaMask wallet. That most gamers don't want that hassle. They want to just game. And so this digital passport allows new gamers to get into Web3 without having to figure out all of this stuff and having to sign transactions. And so it's a non-custodial wallet, and it's awesome for helping bring gamers into the space, and people, they can start loving the games, and then if they want to explore the DeFi and Web3 side of it more and maybe go into self-custody, they can also do that, which is amazing. And so I'm really bullish on what this means, not only for ImmutableX, but for Web3 gaming as a whole.
Right on. Well, then for our Telegram users, TONcoin, which has come out this year, developers have published a roadmap for 2023. And they highlight eight key new features coming out. You might want to check out this roadmap if you're in the Telegram.
Yeah. So TONcoin was going crazy earlier this year and slowed down a little bit, but this
I
new
think-
roadmap is probably, I think it's more healthy to see it slow down rather than pump dump and everything that it was doing before. So good to keep an eye on.
Yeah. We got some quick hits, news and rumors. MetaMask had an update to their privacy settings. So I think this is when you're creating a new wallet, you can click set advanced privacy settings to change their RPC providers, toggle features, send requests to third-party services that help with phishing detection and identifying incoming transactions. So when I read this, it made me think of like presend. So it'll make it easier to integrate some of these other projects. That's what it made me think of. Did you read this at all?
I've looked at it. I think, yeah, it has to do a little bit with security, but I think it had to do with a lot of tracking. A lot of people were worried about the tracking that was going on with MetaMask through certain RPC providers. And so it it'll help kind of watch that. But yeah, phishing detection and incoming transactions does sound like presend. So
Yeah,
it'd
it's
be
just
interesting to see what happens.
this phrase third-party service. You can send requests for third-party services, and that could be a whole bunch of things potentially.
Yeah, that's it. So I don't 100% know exactly what this means, but hopefully it's something good.
That leads to more security and less of that 63 billion number we were talking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I don't think you're a really Logan Paul follower, but there was a class action complaint against Logan Paul of perpetuating fraud for the crypto zoo NFT and the zoo token. Basically, they took in a bunch of money to develop a game, and there has been no development. So they're getting sued. We have all seen this before. Sure.
Yeah, this is not surprising. I'm just surprised that it's taken this long to get to a class action. Maybe it'll be interesting to see if the class action goes further, but we've seen what happened with Kim Kardashian and everything when they got sued for promoting different
I mean,
crypto projects.
he did come up with some 3-point plan to that. One of the points is to relaunch the project. So we'll see what happens. I'm not involved in it personally, but
No, I
that was
don't
interesting.
either.
This is Logan Paul, but it's very similar story in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
So,
and then a couple last quick stories. Mark Wahlberg is going to produce a documentary about the relationship between Sam Bankman-Fried and Binance CEO.
might be interesting.
If you want to follow and watch a documentary take on FTX and everything, why
The
not?
dramatic side, maybe a little bit, but there might be some interesting facts.
Yeah, certain things behind closed doors, and then FTX is sending confidential letters to politicians asking for the donation money back that SBF donated, and so they're asking for it back by the end of March.
Yeah, this is just funny to read. This one.
It's so strange. I don't really know what it means or
Yeah, this
what they intend to do or how they think this is actually going to work, but
this is just high drama. This whole thing.
it's so weird. I don't understand. Like,
How can they ask for money back while they're being accused of being just the worst criminals? It just sounds so strange on the surface.
yeah, and like, does it have to do with filling that hole in their balance sheet? Does it? Is there other reasons? I don't know. I really don't know. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah, they keep it coming, the drama, FTX. Cool. Thanks for joining me as always. Fun. I hope our listeners got something out of it today.
Same here. I love doing the show with you. It's always a good time.
Thanks for listening to Decentralized News. We post to YouTube first, so please consider subscribing to catch the videos as soon as they drop. Our goal is to provide unfiltered content that can help foster genuine discussions to help this entire space grow. Please remember, this is not financial advice, and we are not financial advisors. This show is presented for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research before making any investment decision. Thanks for your support, and stay tuned for the next episode.